Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, welcome back to episode number 7. Great to have you back with us, because today we have a particularly interesting topic, don't we? Because we're going to be looking at inclusion and helping people get better at that. Because from the workshops that we run, the corporate workshops, on helping organizations develop a culture of genuine inclusion, we found that there are a number of fears and concerns that people raise, aren't there?
Yeah.
So we ran a poll recently during Inclusion Week to find out what those fears and concerns were. And we thought it'd be useful to do a session to just unpack that a little bit and help share some ideas on what you can be doing to get better at inclusion and develop this genuine culture of inclusion that actually helps organizations benefit their people, their bottom line. All sorts of benefits come from developing a genuine culture of inclusion, don't they? So the top 2 responses that we had, well, what if I say the wrong thing? A lot of people are concerned about that.
That's always first off the tongue.
And how do I call people out when I see lack of inclusion happening out there? How do I call people out? Again, not easy things to do, but actually there's some really practical things that we can be doing. So that's the focus for this session. Clearly, we're going to be looking at thriving at work. Yeah. And that's the focus for today. But before we dive in, Andrew, why don't you help set the context for us? Inclusion, what does that mean in real terms?
Well, that's a great place to start. And actually, to set it in the wider context, we really want to look at the DEI agenda in general. And that raises 2 kind of issues.
DEI agenda, what's that?
Exactly. It raises 2 issues. What does the DEI even mean? And when we talk, the first issue is when we talk about DEI or EDI, we talk about it as if it's one thing, one agenda. But as our good friend Limbert Spencer, OBE,
no less.
good friend and who I consider a guru in this whole area of diversity.
Well, he's been working in this space for 40 years, hasn't
40
he?
plus years. So as he always points out, it's not just one thing, it's actually 3 things that we're working towards in this one agenda. So let's unpack it. The D stands for diversity. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about what do we mean by diversity, but simply diversity means difference. It just means being different in some way. And if you have 2 people in a room, even if they're from the same ethnicity, we're not carbon copies of each other. 2 unique individuals, they're different. So you have diversity.
That is such an important point, because I think when a lot of people hear the word diversity, they think people who are different from a different ethnicity.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case. It could be same ethnicity, just different.
So if we're going to get the agenda around diversity, equality, and inclusion right, we have to get the language right to start. And diversity simply means difference. It doesn't mean ethnicity. That's the D. The E stands for equality, or in latter years, we've been talking about equity. And the real sentiment behind whichever word you use for the E is about equality in terms of outcome. It's treating people equally well. And the challenge is sometimes that means treating people differently. And we get stuck on this notion that equality means same treatment for everybody. But treating you and I the same doesn't necessarily mean we'll end up with the same equal outcome. And that's why there's more of a move to equity, so that the focus is on treating people well in a way that matters to them and helping them in whatever way they need help, whatever their particular needs are, to achieve the same outcome. And in an organizational case, the same opportunities, the same ability to progress, the same career promotions and so on.
And we've seen that playing out in this whole hybrid situation, haven't we? The move to hybrid, where some people are much happier working in the office. other people are much happier working from home. And it really comes down to where do they do their best work? Where do they get the
Absolutely.
best outcome, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And we underestimate what's going on in people's lives and assume it's just a matter of maybe a frivolous preference. But for some people, they have the setup at home, they have the space, they have the relationships at home and everything that allows them to work well from home. For others, working from home or this intensity of being in the home space with people around them could spell danger.
Yeah.
It could be a case of domestic abuse. So you never really know what's going on in people's lives. And this understanding of equity and equality, there is no shortcut for understanding individuals. We need to have more courage and move on from, HR policies 1.0, where we have a blanket approach for everybody and everybody needs to do this and
just
that's
not gonna
it.
work anymore.
And get more courageous, more innovative, to be able to create more flexible, to create an environment where everybody can thrive and flourish, because we're able to pay attention to the different lived experiences and therefore the particular needs of different groups of people around us. That's what equity really means. How do we pay attention to the different needs and treat people differently so that we can treat them equally well? And that takes courage. And then that moves us on to the I, which is where the question that you asked. And the I stands for inclusion. And the thing is, we tend to think of inclusion as a thing to do. What do we need to do so that we are more inclusive? When really inclusion is more about being. It's how are we being so that people around us feel included, because inclusion is a feeling. It's that sense of feeling safe, feeling valued, feeling trusted, feeling respected, feeling like you belong. It's that feeling that sense that you pick up in the environment that makes you know whether or not it's okay to turn up as your authentic self and allow your authentic difference to make a difference as you work together to achieve organizational goals, or whether or not you need to edit or hide or defend yourself in any way, because in this environment you can't be the true you won't be accepted as you are. And the inclusion, creating that sense of that feeling of really being accepted and belonging and trusted and respected, is vital for people to be able to pour their energies into doing their best work. Otherwise, the energies will be dissipated into trying to survive and definitely not getting anywhere near thrive.
Yeah.
So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we talk about that agenda, what we're really after is being able to create that space, that environment that attracts diversity so that people from different backgrounds want to come and work with you in the first place, where we treat people equally well in ways that matter to them, and where we create the environment that people can flourish, whatever their backgrounds are. They can come, they feel safe, like they belong, like they're respected and trusted, able to do great work. They want to stay in the organization and progress their career because that opportunity is there for them. That's what the whole agenda is about.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So that's really good to know. But you said there were two contexts.
Very well remembered.
What's the second context?
So the first context is to understand the DEI agenda. The second context is to look at how we've been doing it. And really our approach so far is very structural. We look at setting up employee network groups and inclusion committees and what laws or policies we have in place and what data are we analyzing and, what's the kind of recruitment metrics and so on. But we've not been looking at the behaviors so much in terms of how people turn up and what the experience with managers or colleagues actually feel like. And because the challenge with focusing on structural things, it's that we are kind of raising awareness of the issue without empowering people to change their behaviors and turn up differently and work together to create that sense of inclusion. And where there is information without transformation, you get tensions. That's why people end up walking on eggshells around each other, ending up being confused or defensive or just fearful about what this DEI agenda really means for them, how it's going to impact them. That's where, so we end up with a lot of tension and fear.
And those fears and tensions can really cripple exactly the kind of conversations that we need to have for people to work together and deliver the kind of results that we're looking for, isn't it?
Exactly. The fears and the tensions work against building real relationships. Yeah. And in order to get inclusion right, you have to build strong relationships.
Absolutely.
And so to understand inclusion, and before we even address the question, we really need to understand how the behaviors, because if you think about it, everything we say and do will impact people one way or another. Either we're doing things that will, as individuals, will allow people to feel safe in our presence, to feel respected by us or trusted by us. You know, we each have responsibility for the way we turn up in all our interactions. When you look at things structurally, it's easy to relegate responsibility to the structures that exist to sort out inclusion. But when you talk about behaviors, then we see how we each have a role to play. And that's why we say inclusion is everybody's responsibility.
There you go.
It's our ability to respond more inclusively. And especially if you're a manager or a leader, what you say and do lands that much more powerfully because of positional authority. So we can either be doing things or be behaving in a way that makes people feel included, and that strengthens the relationship, or we can be behaving in a way that makes people feel excluded and we're damaging the relationship. So being intentional about our behaviors, how we are being, and how people experience us in their interactions, that's really the difference that we can make in creating a more inclusive environment.
And we've seen that, haven't we, in the workshops that we run, where people talk about recognizing for the first time actually how they're coming across, how they're landing in what we call other people's emotional bank accounts.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, and in the moment thinking, oh, hang on, I've done something here that hasn't landed so well. I need to change my behaviors, because the behaviors that I'm exhibiting are not great. They're not great for the relationship. They're leaving people feeling just like they're not part of the team. They don't belong in the environment.
Yeah.
So helping people change those behaviors is a key part of this.
Absolutely. And once you start challenging the mindset that it's somebody else's job or responsibility to figure out inclusion, and bringing it personally to how are you turning up and how are people experiencing you, or what efforts are you putting into connecting well with people who are different to you, that is, that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
So in that context,
why don't we get to the results from, or the questions rather, from the results from the polls? There were results that we asked, because the first question or the first response that people came up with, the most popular one was, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I get it wrong? I want to get this thing right, but what if I actually say the wrong thing? How do we help them with that?
So this speaks to what we said about the way we've been doing inclusion, because we've been basically equipping people without giving them the power to transform behaviors. You end up with fear. And when you end up with fear, there is this paralysis around, what if I say the wrong thing, so I better not say anything at all. But the way and so you end up going down this route where people fast track to, we have a knee-jerk reaction when you get anything wrong. There are legal proceedings. We fast track to grievance procedures because we're not able to talk about things. And our response to that would be to say three things. Be warm. You naturally speak easily, build rapport and friendships with people who are like you. Try to do the same with everybody, not just people who look like you and think like you. Be warm, be friendly. That's a safe place to be, because if you're coming from a place of good intentions, even if you get it wrong, you can have a conversation about it and get it right next time, rather than falling straight into grievance procedures, which is what happens when there's no relationship. The second thing is be brave. You can notice in the moment if you've said or done something that doesn't land well, and have a better conversation. Oops, I can see I got that wrong. Or if you observe somebody getting it wrong, you can say, actually, when you said that, do you realize this is how it would have impacted that person? So we can just be that much more brave in our conversations. And if the fact is, to answer the question, what if I get it wrong? You're going to get it wrong.
You will at some point.
You're going to get it wrong at some point. So just take the pressure off. Focus on building stronger relationships so that you can deal with the times when you do get it wrong. And the third thing is to be intentional, because it's not other people's responsibilities to explain their lived experiences to us or to educate us about the things that are triggers for them or that are really sore points because of experiences that they've had. It's not other people's job to explain that to us. If we really care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I hope we do, because everybody wins when we do, but if we really care about that, then it's our job to do the homework so that when we turn up, we can treat people well in ways that matter to them and not end up doing or saying the wrong things out of ignorance.
So do not fear the question, what if I get it wrong? Or the sense, what if I get it wrong? Chances are at some point you're going to get it wrong. Be warm, be brave, be intentional. But we have some tips on how to be intentional, don't we? We have the belong model. Do you want to talk us through that one?
Yeah, and we love that model because firstly it says belong, which is what you're
Absolutely.
after. You want to create this sense of belonging. But it's an acrostic, isn't it? Where each letter stands for something. And the first one, the B, is beware of biases. We all have them. And to become one way to become more aware of biases that you might have is just notice your responses in certain situations and do more reflection. So, for example, you might be on the train, you see a black man walking, and you find yourself suddenly clutching your handbag close or holding your possessions more tightly. You want to be honest with yourself and reflect and ask yourself, why is that? Why would I do it more for this person than for anybody else? Because your biases will blindside you and they'll leak out in those moments. So the more reflection we can do on why did I respond that way in that situation? Why did I make that decision? You could be considering a promotion round and you suddenly find yourself favoring the young man who might be single or not have family responsibilities over the woman with young kids. They both have the same track record of delivery. Why is that? So the more reflective we can be.
What assumptions are you making in your head that allow you to make those decisions? Absolutely.
Exactly. Because remember, we had that workshop where this woman was really frustrated. There was a job that involved travel overseas. She had young kids, but she had all the support in place to do it. And she was so frustrated that she wasn't even considered because people assumed with a young family she wouldn't be interested. So it's, when you make it, we just reflect. Good leaders, good managers, people who are into self-development, reflect a lot. And if you reflect, just notice the decisions and the reactions you've had and ask yourself why. Or if you're brave, ask a friend, people in your circle that you trust to share with you anything they've observed about biases you might have. So that's the B, beware of biases. The E is educate yourself. And we spoke about that earlier. It's not other people's job to explain their lived experience to you. Do some reading. There's so much YouTube, books, conversations online. Educate yourself about the lived experiences. And that links to the L, which is listen to the distinct voices. I was so pleased when the government made a decision to stop using BAME, which is Black and Ethnic Minorities, or all lumped together, because the lived experiences are very different. For example, Black people are the only ones who are enslaved. The minority ethnics don't have that history in the same way that we do. So very different lived experiences. Don't lump people together. Listen to the distinct voices.
It might be convenient to lump them together, but not helpful.
It's a shortcut, but we need to do the hard graft
at the back end,
to get this right. The O is offer help. Get involved in the DEI initiatives, in the various committees, in the various networking groups, because the more you get involved, the more you get exposed to different people's stories stories and perspectives. You get the chance to share yours and really influence creating this environment where it's not about some of them, but it's about all of us, where we create an environment where we all get heard and we can all thrive. The N is notice mistreatment, notice where discrimination is happening, notice where people are being, their microaggressions happening. And the second question links to the N, so I'll just leave it there. The N is notice it, but the point is do something about it. And then the G is really where we live. It's get personal. It's get to know people as individuals. Grouping and lived experiences, shared experiences in that sense helps, but there is no shortcut to getting personal and building those one-on-one relationships, because that's where you can really play your part in making people feel included, feel safe, feel respected, feel trusted, feel valued, feel like they belong, so they can turn up as their best selves and really give the best of what they have to offer.
So it's about taking responsibility for doing our part,
Yeah.
isn't it? Wonderful. So if that was a great response to question one.
Yeah.
Question two was, how do I call people out? When I see things that aren't working so well, how do I call people out?
So yes, and that's a great question, and it links to the end that we spoke about. Notice the mistreatment, but don't just notice it. Do something about it. Get involved. Say something. Speak up. And the problem is often we tend to think of the best thing to say 10 minutes after the event. And that still happens, that still happens to me. And what I'll say is, if that happens, don't beat yourself up. Do think about what else you could have said, so that you keep getting better and better and more ready with the response.
Exactly. So the next time it happens, you are ready, absolutely.
Keep doing the reflection and thinking about what could you have done differently to respond. But there are two things that we'd like to offer. The first is something that we spoke about in one of the posts in Inclusion Week, which is those magic 3 words: help me understand. And just using those 3 words can really take the pressure off of you and how you respond to something you've seen, and put the pressure on the person who might have said something that is unkind or mistreating somebody in any way, or some kind of microaggression. You can say, help me understand what you meant by that. Help me understand why that's funny. If they've said something that might be racist or discriminatory, just help me understand what you're trying to say, because that makes them need to explain themselves and opens up the way for a better conversation. And the second thing that
and it could be that they just haven't thought about it before. They're just doing it and they're saying something that they've heard somebody else say or what have you. So them having to explain it might help them think, actually, why did I say that?
That's how your biases leak out, and it can hold people to account to say, actually, that's a bias that you need to address. Just help me understand what you meant by that. It might make them feel uncomfortable, but that's good because it makes us question things. And the second thing is, don't just call people out, call them higher. And if you have values or as an organization around how you'll treat each other, or if you have a charter around diversity, equity, and inclusion, something that as an organization you've committed to, that's a great way to hold people accountable to behaviors. Even senior leaders, you might not, I don't know if you might have the courage to speak with them directly, just have an aside and say, let's talk about what just happened. But the question you want to ask is, how did what you just said or what you just did, how did that demonstrate the values that we say we're committed to, or how did that show that we're really committed to being more inclusive and embracing diversity and so on? So those 2 things, help me understand, and holding people to values or charters that you have, calling them higher rather than just calling them out, can be really powerful in noticing when there's mistreatment and doing something about it. Because that's how, as individuals, as teams, as an organization, we'll get better at inclusion, not ignoring things, but holding each other accountable for being better the next time we turn up together.
Wonderful. So there you have them, folks. Answers to 2 of the questions that are on people's minds around this whole inclusion agenda topic. What if I get it wrong? We're saying, well, if you get it wrong, relax, take the pressure off. all of us get it wrong at some point. Something will come out. They're biases. They're real biases that can leak out. Be conscious of them. Focus on building the relationship with the people around you.
Absolutely.
Humbly acknowledge when you get it wrong.
Yeah.
Hands up. Sorry, I got that one wrong. What can I do to do it differently? Put in the effort to learn, to understand, to grow, to develop, so that the next time it comes around, you'll have a much better do a much better job of it. And then answers to the question, well, how do I call people out? We're saying, don't just call them out, call them higher. Use the values to help them elevate their behaviors so that they can actually start developing those habits that will strengthen relationships rather than damage relationships, actually strengthen the relationships and create that environment of inclusion that we're all desiring.
Yeah, because if we're going to create an environment where we all thrive,
absolutely,
we need to understand the particular needs of each of the different groups that might be present in the organization and pay attention to those particular needs to make sure everybody feels safe, respected, valued, trusted, like they belong, so they can turn up as their best selves, do amazing work together, and help the organization to achieve the goals while everybody is thriving and flourishing there.
Absolutely. So hopefully that helps address some of those questions on people's minds. It might be on your mind or the people around you. If it is, perhaps share this with the people around you. But hopefully that helps, and we can all get better at creating and developing these cultures of inclusion that everybody feels like they belong, they have a part to play, and they can actually deliver the results that we're all looking to achieve. So I think with that, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
See you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships, so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.